Hi, my name is Adelle Onyango. I am a Kenyan media personality known because I was on radio for 9.5 years, and I've just recently transitioned and gone into podcasting. So I have 2 podcasts. I have an initiative that is the Adelle Onyango initiative that works with youth and creating opportunities in terms of employment and entrepreneurship, and also women in terms of survivors of rape and gender-based violence in general. But I think I'm just under all of that, or above all of that, I am an evolving, unapologetically African woman. Ah, I'm coming for you. I think I've chosen to do what I'm doing because A, we don't get around to at life. So you either leave it all now or you're actually wasting it. Like, it sounds harsh, but it's actually the truth, right? And I'm very aware, thankfully, maybe it's because of how I was brought up, or I don't know, of the things that I really are passionate about. So when I find that thing, I do it 100%. So it may seem like I'm doing many things on the outside, but for me, because I'm so passionate about those things, it's just like an everyday thing. So if it's youth, I'm passionate about youth and creating opportunities, but also holding certain leaders accountable for certain things they have to provide for the youth. If it's women and gender-based violence, I'm very passionate about that. So I don't even see it as work or whatever. I'm just like, oh, we have to do this. Oh, okay, we have to do this, and just get it done. Yeah. Radio first was not the plan, but I also now know that we make plans, and that's fantastic. You have to be organized, but also the universe has like a completely different or similar plan to yours, right? So I did study journalism and psychology at USIU. And I did those 2 because I was interested in both of them, and I was young enough at the time to be able to do both instead of having to choose one. And while I was at USIU, I've been a poet my whole life, writing poetry, enjoying reading poetry and performing it. And so I used to perform a lot of my poetry. And then because we all need pocket money, me and a friend of mine, Cassandra, decided to come up with Open Mic hosted by Adelle. And it was a platform for poets and musicians to be able to showcase their talent. And it was really fun. And we used to have it every month. So people like Fena performed at Open Mic, Elani, who were late for their sound check. I'll always remember that. But their performance was so good, I forgot. Patricia Kihoro, Wendy Kimani, Manjoro, Checkmate Mido. So many different people performed at that gig. So I really then became a voice in terms of poetry. And USIU then had this radio show, radio station, mainly for the media people. The people who are not doing, because my concentration was public relations, so for the people who are doing radio as their concentration. And I was invited on a show on Saturday to just share my poetry, and I did. And then every other week after that, they kept inviting me. What I didn't know is that the host of the show, because he was like really into radio, I was just like having fun, was recording all of our shows on CDs. I feel so old. CDs. Anyway, and sending them out to different media houses. So when 1FM was setting out, they got one of these CDs and they called me. And I didn't know this guy was recording, by the way. So they called me. At first I thought they wanted to host me to share my poetry, but they were like, can you host the Drive show, which is actually a peak time show on traditional radio? I said yes, even though I didn't know how to do the damn thing. And that's how I got onto the Drive show at 1FM, which is where I was for 2.5 years. And then I got poached by Kiss. And so that's how I got in. Long story short, yeah. Well, like during my radio career, I really just was enjoying it because first, 1FM only played African music, and I love African music. So it was like listening to the music that I jammed to at home on air. I had a fantastic co-host. I really enjoyed the energy, and I was like 20, 21 maybe at the time. And it was just a good space to be in at that age, at that time. And I could have conversations with people. And when I moved to KISS, it was a bigger platform. I still moved with the African music thing and created a show at Kiss FM called Urban Africa, which was purely only for African music. So I still got to do the things that I enjoyed. And so I was really dedicated to this radio thing, even though it wasn't the plan. But I think also because audio is very fascinating to me, which is why now I'm in podcasting. It really commands attention. To be able to command attention without the fluff of video or any gimmicks is amazing. It's a powerful tool. I love storytelling and being able to get people to tell their stories as well. I think it's entertaining, but it's also a way to learn that's not boring. And so I think it may not have been my plan, but it appealed to certain things that I loved. So when I got into radio, I just like buried my head in it 100%. Yeah. When it comes to the Adelle Onyango initiative, I think it was always in me. I just hadn't structured it. So I think two things. One, my late mom was very key in talking openly about breast cancer awareness because she battled breast cancer for years, openly at a time when nobody spoke about cancer, more so breast cancer, right? And then, you know, she was part of the Kenya Breast Health Program. At one point, she was leading it to be able to give Kenyan women who couldn't afford chemotherapy or radiotherapy, didn't have a place to stay when they came to Nairobi, to actually get treatment, a place to stay, and just facilitating all of that. I think that, to me, was teaching me without me knowing that you kind of can't just come through life and just get out, just only looking out for yourself. You know, what have you passed on to the next person? I think that's what makes people live forever. It's those strong legacies through the opportunities and the doors you've opened for other people, right? So that was born without me even knowing. And my first job was working in Kenya Breast Health Program, and so I was around that type of thing. And then when I joined radio, to date, I'm still in the WhatsApp group for Team Adelle, which was created, the hashtag was created by my listeners. And so I'd interact with my listeners, we'd go for hangouts, and I'd listen to the issues they were having. Someone who's just casually saying he's not in university because his parents can't afford it. And, you know, and I was just like, that's not okay. Like, how is this country operating? Like, how are we okay knowing that lack of finances is keeping people from opportunities, it's keeping them from knowledge and stuff like that? Like, that's not okay. And so obviously I'm not like leader of the country, so I can't exactly change on that scale, but I'm pretty sure in my own sphere of influence there's stuff that I can do. And so that's, I think, where I found my passion of wanting to be a voice for the youth and create opportunities for the youth and make sure that leaders are held accountable in my own space. And then for gender-based violence, I'm a survivor of rape, and that's something that I've spoken about publicly. And from my story, I realized there was a huge loophole in terms of psychosocial support. It's too expensive. It was too expensive back then. It's still too expensive right now. So how do we make sure that survivors of gender-based violence, survivors of rape, get access to therapy and quality therapy, not the therapy that's going to tell you just go home and pray about it. Not that praying is bad, but mental health is an actual thing. Like the same way you go to your doctor for a headache, you need an actual trained specialist. So how can I be part of ensuring that quality service reaches survivors? So I think it was always inside me. It just came out a bit more structured in the initiative. It was, bursts of it were there, but then I sat down with my team and then just structured it a bit better. So I picked this. Is there a car coming? No, this is an important letter. Hold the traffic for this one. I don't want this one anymore. It's so interesting to talk about like highlights because I always feel like when I've super achieved, I'll know it. And I haven't felt that yet. To be quite frank, I haven't felt like, yes, this is, you know, we're doing this, we've done it. Because in my head, there's so much more that I need to do that I haven't even begun to scratch the surface, right? Um, so I'm just like, yes, I'm proud of myself, like, yay! But I'm just like, there's so much more to do. But it feels good. Obviously, it feels good when certain organizations are like, we see what you're doing and we appreciate it. Keep on going. You're like, because there's some times when you're on this path that's very different that you're just like, am I mad for thinking that this can actually materialize to something, that this is impactful? Especially in the creative fields, you're like, I feel so alone because nobody's getting it, right? So it feels good when someone does get it. So for me, it's the initiative having 4,300 youth members is amazing for me because I'm like, oh wow, they have trusted me to be able to create programs that make sense for them and that push them to the next level, right? That's a highlight for me. Being on the BBC 100 Women 2017, this is a highlight for me because I didn't even know they were watching anything I was doing then. Got the email and I was just like, is someone trying to con me, or like, ways a bit about send money to, you know? But it felt amazing to be able to be recognized on that platform. 100 Women for 2018 OK Africa was also big because that's Africa, and I'm all about, you know, being at the forefront on that continental agenda. So that felt good. But I think I still have a lot of work to do to actualize the stuff that's in my head that I still need to bring to fruition.
I think this is chana. Okay, no, it's called sake. It's so hot.
Yeah, so this year, I left traditional radio, and I think it had been a long time coming because I like to think that I'm still young, and I think I wanted to be able to create a platform that was mine and to start that creation early enough for it to grow in the next 10 years to something big. I wanted to be able to tell the stories that matter to the African continent the way I believe they should be. And I wanted to influence some sort of change. I wanted to be part of the digital growth that media is going through, right? And I'd done 9.5 years, and so it was time for a different challenge, to be quite frank. I think as maybe Kenyans, maybe not, let me not say as Africans, but as Kenyans, we go to school and you're told for all of these years that once you graduate campus, you need to get that degree because what you're working towards is getting that job, right? Like that job is the peak of success and it's the peak of your definition, which I really think it's not. I mean, if you have a job and you love it, that's great, but it doesn't define who you are. Like there's a huge definition, it's just part of it, right? So that's why leaving radio, traditional radio, was not as crazy to me as it was to everybody else. I'm just like, what? There's a lot to me than, you know, a job. And it was exciting. Obviously, you have to do the planning right. You have to save. You have to have your strategy. You have to have the right people around you. You have to have the right advisors around you. But also, internally, you have to like work on having that grit and that like push so that you don't become this person who's governed by fear and it just holds you in this tiny corner and you never jump out and try something. And so podcasting is really fun to me. I started constructing my studio in January, and I wanted to do it even for myself. Like, you can record a podcast in your car or in your bedroom, but I wanted to do this for me, to be able to say, I have done this. It's almost like a gift to myself. And so I was doing it. I started in January. I was trying to finish it by February for it to be like a birthday gift to myself, but I didn't, because fundis sometimes it can be like a bit tough. But so I constructed that space for it to be my space, and for it to give me that sense of this is where you're creating, right? So I first launched my first podcast 21 weeks ago. I don't remember the date, but 21, because we're on episode 21 and it's weekly. So 21 weeks ago, and it's called Legally Clueless. I got to the point where I developed anxiety, I think, because of the setting that I was in. And it just documents my human journey and the different things that I'm battling. And the listeners can be able to send in their voice notes and be part of the episodes, which I absolutely love. We've gotten stories from Ethiopia, and very soon we're taking it on the road to have like pop-up podcasts and just record people around Kenya and even around Africa. So that's weekly. And then I have Perspective, which is another baby. It's a podcast that happens every second month, and that one is live. So Kenyans are free to come, not only Kenyans, anyone is free to come. It happens at K1, and the next one is on the 3rd of September. So they're free to come, entry is free, and it's a space for men and women to be able to talk about gender issues. So September 3rd, we have the next one at K1. And I'll be putting up more details about that on my social media.
I was not involved in this conversation. First, I can't be anyone. But secondly, this money, I didn't know there were terms.
A lot of women are not asked out. Like, unashukia tu siku ingine tu, ati, hey, this is my girlfriend. You're like, alas.
It was very scary breaking out, but I think timeline. So I'd been thinking about leaving radio for 4 years, right? And I knew I had to be right with the timing. So 1 year was dedicated to like, am I really feeling this? And I know there was 1 year where it was a lot of emotions and fear and wrestling this fear, because I have grown up in that condition, and not in my family, but in the community, of knowing that the job, you stay, like you have a job, what's wrong with you? Like, so obviously there was that fear that I had to battle. My family was absolutely, I think, from my uncles and talking to my uncles and my sisters, they were just like, yeah, we knew this was coming. Like, why are you acting like we're shocked? Because we know you and the type of person you are. So there was fear. But the thing is, and this is from listening to a lady called Lola Omolola, and she is an amazing African woman who's created a safe space called Finn that has over 1 million women online on Facebook. So she's amazing. And she gave a talk about frightening decisions. The thing is about frightening decisions is it gets to a point when you're enacting it and you're putting it into play, it's not frightening to you because you've gone through the fear, then now you've prepared. So to you, you're like, this is not a haphazard decision. I've actually mentally prepared to you. So when you're doing it, it's more frightening to other people than to you. And so I think fear is normal, but you can't let it be distractive. I'm living as Adele to my fullest. And in everything that I do, I'm living it to its fullest. And then things just happen and just organically spring from that. I don't want to restrict anything that I'm doing to a goal and only one thing. I just want it to just thrive. And that's how creative people are, I guess. Like, you create something and you almost have to have a team to keep you on track. Because once you create it, you're like, next. And they're like, no, you have to keep growing this one, please. But I'm just like in a really beautiful space in my life, and I'm creating again. And so I wouldn't want to limit anything that I'm creating. And in a digital age, there's so much you can do. I look at my stats for my podcast. I see people in the States, in Australia, in Ghana, in Senegal listening. I would never have thought that I could say anything that would resonate with somebody that far, or somebody from a completely different culture. So yeah, I just let it grow. I'm just letting it grow, yeah.
The workshop has exercises that make men and women start thinking differently about the gender stereotypes that they uphold, either in their personal lives or even in the work that they do.
You know, when it comes to women supporting each other, I think in my experience, I've never had to force women, support me. I've never had to. And I think it's because, sadly, what we talk about, we're affected most, right? So if we're talking about gender-based violence and rape, yes, there are male survivors. But if you look at the statistics, we're affected a lot. So we don't have the luxury of not supporting certain causes because it directly affects us. It directly will be a matter of life or death for me as a Kenyan woman, right? So that's why we come out and speak out loudly. But I also think, honestly, that men also, if you're a decent human being, you will understand that supporting women and supporting women empowerment is not taking power away from men. And so there are great men who've come out and called themselves feminists because they understand the importance of equal pay. They understand the importance of equal access to certain opportunities, right? So I think any decent human being will see that it is not right for certain things to happen. Not that, oh, that's a woman thing, I can't voice, my voice can't be seen. That no. I think any decent human being, and I keep saying, if the stats were reversed and there were so many men going to, I think I would still be like, hey guys, I think we have a problem. What is all this happening? Because as a decent human being, you don't want certain things happening to another human being, right? So I think women gravitate towards causes that they know will affect them directly. We live this every single day, right? But I think it's also high time that men start joining the bandwagon and start speaking louder and start being part of the conversations even. So guys, welcome back to another episode of Adelle on the Loose. So I think it's about time that we do another 50-50. The last 50-50 ended up with me kissing a giraffe. Yes, I am a millennial. Just like, yes, I just made it. But I think honestly, and I say this all the time, young people are highly misunderstood. And we have the generation before us that doesn't understand the times that we're in. There's some elements that have been made easier because of the digital age. And that's just the truth. That a young person now will not have to go the route that our parents did to get the same thing. Some things have been made easier because of a click of a button. And that's just the truth. It doesn't make somebody lazier. It just makes them smart. And yes, while working hard is good, but you've also got to work smart, right? And as far as instant gratification and stuff like that, and wanting things overnight, I don't think the digital world changes that aspect of having to grow something from the ground up, right? It might take a shorter time than it did 20 years ago. Great, fantastic. But it'll still require a lot of hard work, a lot of thought, a lot of building, a lot of failure, and getting back up and redoing it. Because if you create something, I think you should be very worried if something you create becomes a hit instantly. And worried for two things, because that then means that hotness and the hit doesn't last too long because there's no actual concrete foundation. And then the second thing is, how do you top that? Like, what comes after that? Wouldn't you rather something that gradually grows and is on such a firm foundation that it can't be destroyed so easily? I think that's my thought on overnight success. I think for me, obviously I do think about like, when I go, especially with the drama around funerals in this country and people yapping about the wrong things at funerals. So you do think about, mine and who's going to speak and what are they going to say. But I think what I think about more is making sure that I don't die with unlived life within me. Like I die when I'm like, I've completely exhausted life, like where it's like, even God is just like, and you're just come, You've overlived. And I think that makes a good foundation for a great legacy, because it means you've lived so hard, or you've created so much, that you've impacted lives, maybe with words that you've said, maybe with opportunities you've created. But my focus is not so much living for others, it's just making sure that I've really exhausted the life within me, so that by the time I'm dead, I have no regrets, or not, man, that day I didn't, you know what I mean? So I think that for me is my focus, is just to live the most out of the life that I've been given.